Greetings to everyone, all our attendees. Thank you for joining Talk with the Docs. I'm Doc Hunsley, the Executive Director and founder of SOAR Special Needs. Thank you so much for coming out today. We will be talking on coping with anxiety and stress in the family with special needs during COVID-19. And I'm honored to have with us two very special guests. The first is Dr. Steve Grcevich. He serves as the founder and president of Key Ministry. He is a child and adolescent psychiatrist with extensive research experience evaluating medications in children and teens for ADHD, anxiety, and depression. And he also has written the book Mental Health in the Church, which was published by HarperCollins Zondervan in February 2018. I was going to show my copy, but I left my copy at home as I'm kind of going through that again. So I apologize there, Steve, but we're glad to have you. And
well,
also,
thanks for having me.
Yeah, and also joining us is Dr. Sheri McClurg. Sheri currently serves as the managing director of Family Center by the Falls alongside Dr. G, and works with children and families who struggle with emotional, developmental, or learning challenges. Dr. Sheri is also the executive director of New Horizons for Children, an international orphan care ministry which serves children and their caregivers in orphanages or foster care in countries around the world. Finally, she works the John Maxwell team leading workshops on personal growth and leadership. Her passion is to help others grow, thrive, and do life better. Dr. Sheri has been married for 20 years and has 3 children. Each of her children has dealt with some type of struggle, emotional or physical, and her youngest son has profound disabilities with nonverbal autism and multiple medical conditions. And then just my real quick background, everyone calls me Doc. My background is I'm a pediatrician, worked in an emergency room, and kept getting sick from my patients and had to hang up my stethoscope as I almost died from taking care of my patients. It's now been about 15 years. And I'm blessed as well, coming up on my 25th wedding anniversary, got 3 kids, and my middle child, Mark, was born with Dravet syndrome, which is a very rare genetic seizure disorder. And by the time he was 2, got the diagnosis of autism. And then 9 years ago now, he was cured of all that when he was born into heaven. We've walked through the stress of being a parent, and then through the stress of grieving a child, losing a child with disabilities. So with that, want to welcome our speakers here, and then welcome all of our participants. Again, for our participants, if you've got any questions, you can use the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen during the webinar, and then you can also do it in the chat here and everything, and we'll kind of get everything up and going with that. But we are glad to have everyone here, and we will, a couple hours this afternoon, we will get this up on our Facebook page, and then we'll also have it up on our YouTube page with that. So it looks like, and I have tried to do a couple different things here. I don't think our Facebook is going to work today, unfortunately, with that. And thanks, Beth. I did try the trick that you gave, but it didn't work. So let's just kind of open things up. You know, today is such a new and interesting day. We've got, families with individuals with disabilities already are under tremendous amount of stress, which we already know so much about. But now with having COVID-19, just about every state now having stay-at-home orders or shelter-in-place orders, or families being on quarantine, it's just added an even higher stress for the families right now that they haven't seen before. We've got parents now who they're now wearing multiple hats. They are now all of a sudden the school teacher. They now are the speech therapist. They're the occupational therapist. They're the janitor. They're the chef. They are doing everything, and they rarely have time for themselves, on top of things, to just think through things. So just wanted to spend today to talk through how we can help our families, on two fronts. One, help those families who are listening today, and then those churches who are listening today. How can we help the churches be able to reach out to our families and help them through this time? And we've already got a few questions that have come in, but there are several who just want to know what are some issues that families are even going through with that. So I'd like to just kind of open it up to Steve and Sheri. What are some just general coping things that we can do to help with this anxiety and stress that we see? And the first thing I want to stress is that this is temporary. This is not going to be a long-term thing. This is a season, and we got to remind ourselves of that. But it's a very real thing right now that we need to deal with. So, Steve and Sheri, what are some of your thoughts?
Well, Doc, I'll go ahead and go first. That a few weeks ago, in looking forward and anticipating that some of this stuff was going to be coming, I did a little review of, well, what kind of research that we have that would talk about, how people cope with quarantine and the length of social isolation that a lot of folks are, currently experiencing. And I mean, this is like a gigantic science project in process, because there hasn't been any other truly comparable experience to look at. But the little bit of data that we have is somewhat concerning. So if you go back to the SARS outbreak, for example, in Toronto in 2003, and when they were looking at folks who, like physicians, other healthcare workers in the hospital who had to go on quarantine, with 10 days quarantine, they were 5 times more likely to develop post-traumatic stress than their coworkers in the hospital who weren't under quarantine. Kids who were quarantined were 4 times more likely to develop PTSD. Rates of depression averaged around 30% a month after the quarantine was over. And even 3 years down the road, they found that the people who had been through that experience were 5 times more likely than their peers to experience depression. And so one of the things that I think is really critical during this time, or a couple of things I think would be really critical, is that one, everything that we can do to try and maintain social connectedness becomes critically important. Now, again, with our ministry, our focus is on church. And I've been encouraging church leaders, okay, great, we got our worship services up and online. You have to put the whole social infrastructure of your church online. Your small groups, your discipleship, your Bible study, your children's ministry, all of it, so that everything that we can do right now to help people to feel connected is truly critical. Now, putting on like the child psychiatrist hat, one of the things that we know about kids who struggle with anxiety is that oftentimes, like, the way the kids learn how to deal with stressful situations is by watching their parents and other trusted adults manage their way through those things. And, we use the term social modeling to refer to that. And so one of the things I think that parents and other adults and church leaders need to be cognizant of during this time is that, kids and other family members are going to be watching us in the way that we cope and adapt. And so that we need to be aware of what they're going to learn by having an opportunity to watch and experience our example.
Yeah, that's great.
You mentioned right at the start, Doc, that there's so many things for a special needs family that get entwined in this, what's going on right now. So just as a typical family, we have to deal with the reality that there's this virus out there and that people can get sick and that some people might even die from that. And we're dealing with the economic implications. And that's kind of everybody in the whole world right now. We're all in that exact same boat. But I think there's also this other piece for our special needs families. Being one of those families myself, we have this other piece that comes with it, that other challenge of, I now have my special needs child at home full time. And so I've lost a lot of supports. At school, we have, teachers and aides and resources and services and programs and all sorts of things there. Plus, some of us have, caregivers that are coming into our home that help us and support us there. And right now, all of those things have been, suspended, or some of them have been altered. And there's a big loss going on there. And for me, it brings that other category. It's not just dealing with the fears of the virus or dealing with the economic implications. I also have to deal with the anxiety and worry and concern as a parent of, do I have the ability to take on all of this? And is my child going to lose any ground or regress? I mean, we've worked for 16 years to get him to the point where he's at. And when you start pulling away all these services, I think that's another huge challenge and burden that we as special needs families are feeling right now. That's just really, really heavy. It's hard enough to tackle the first two, but now I've got this fear of, am I enough for my special needs child? And that's just, a huge burden that we have to carry. And so when I think about how do we get through this time, there's a lot of things that just generally can help us through in managing our anxiety. But I think another really important piece for us as caregivers is being kind to ourselves. We have so much going on, and my son has a myriad of services because he's pretty profound, and I can't do all of those despite my education, my background, my skill set. I can't do all of those. And we shouldn't expect ourselves to do all of those things. We have to cut ourselves some slack and some grace and say, okay, what's going to be good enough for this season? Because like you said, it's temporary. This is not a forever thing. What do I need to do to get through the next few weeks or the next month or so? And in our family, what we've kind of done is we've looked at, I can't tackle all the skills that school was working on. I can't address every IEP goal. But what to me is most important right now? What do I want to make sure that we maintain for Nicholas? And just give myself some grace and compassion and let the rest all go. And so that's what we've done. We've kind of picked one or two areas that we would like to see him grow during the season at home and just let go of all the other stuff. And I think that's really critical.
Yeah, I agree completely. And I think completely jumping on where you ended there, it's so important that we do give ourselves grace through this time period. And we cannot expect to maintain the same level that the schools have done. That's just impossible to do. And we can't do everything. But there are many things that we can do to try to tap in. For instance, speech therapy. I know I've talked with many families and a few speech therapists. They're actually setting up Zoom meetings with some of their kids and able to maintain some of that. So that's some ways that you might be able to take some of that off your plate where you don't need to do that. And then you're back to just working on like you normally did, just helping with the words and whatever it might be. But we also have many other families, and I've talked with several families who have more medically fragile kids who, they normally have caretakers who come into the house. But right now, due to, COVID-19, they're afraid of their child getting COVID-19. So they're not bringing in the care providers for them, and they're doing all the care themselves. So that's added on, that extra bit, and they're doing the absolute best they can, but they're absolutely worn out with that. So what are some ways that, especially for those families, what are some ways that the church that we can talk to can come around those families and help them and assist them through this and let them know that they're still being loved, and the church is still there for them?
Well, Sheri, since you have one of those families, I'll let you go first on this one.
And this is personal experience again. Our church, we have a few prayer partners at our church that I hear from via text probably every other day, if not every day, with this just came to mind. This is what I'm praying for your family today. And they're just like little tiny lifesavers to me that just, I'm overwhelmed and I'm trying to, because I'm, also on top of all of this, a lot of us are bringing work home. So we're trying to take on everything with our child and our other children. We don't want them getting lost, and our jobs. And it's a lot. But when you get that text or you get that phone call that just says, hey, I'm thinking about you, just want to know how I can pray for you today, what's going on, like those, just that little bit of encouragement is huge. And then that's one of the ways that some of our friends at church are serving us. The other thing that's been pretty meaningful is, like Steve had mentioned earlier, is our church has gone online, and being able to connect and have the ability as a special needs family. You can't always sit together in church, and being online has been kind of fun because our family can all sit together and do sensory activities and play on the living room floor and watch church together. And so those online resources, our church is starting up its Bible studies now. So to me, those are just huge points of connection, reaching out to our families, letting them know we care, and then still being able to help them in their faith walk. And so, those are for what's going on at our church right now.
Yeah. Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah. And so, thinking about this, in terms of like practical helps, like I think of, again, like, your situation where you've got like some issues where you're immunocompromised, now that like they're talking as if walking into the supermarket is like taking your life into your hands. If you're going out to shop for your family, are there certain staples or things that you can pick up, for other families where, again, because an adult or a child in the family has some sort of medical condition that makes them more vulnerable to severe infection. I would think that that's something that folks can do that would be very helpful. The other thing that I've heard about from some families that I'm in touch with is that these kids with more severe disabilities, where they're dependent upon somebody, a nurse, a home health aide coming into the house, one of their great fears is what happens if that person gets sick? Or, they've got a child now that they have to watch because school isn't in session. And so that for those churches that are where they're interconnected enough and they have like awareness of people in terms of like gifts and talents and experiences in their church, being able to connect family up with people who can potentially be of support in some of these unique situations. Again, if you have like a retired nurse, if you have other people who've like worked in like a medical facility who might be able to like help them out in a situation like that, is something that would bring them, great peace of mind and comfort at a time like this.
Yeah. Yeah. I know, there are several churches that I've talked with, and we've got Michelle on here and she's shared as well. They're actually delivering meals and food to some families. Like you said, Steve, doing some grocery shopping. Some of the other things that, some churches have been doing that I know have been doing medicine pickup with the pharmacies. I know some pharmacies are starting to do home delivery now, but not all of them can. Other things, just even yard work. We're now coming into spring. And I'll tell you, a family with disabilities, when trying to run through everything else, yard work's going to be the last thing on their mind. And trying to rake leaves or try to mow the grass. And we can easily handle mowing someone's yard with social distancing. We don't have to have any interaction with that family. Come in, mow, and go with that. So, but that would be such a huge blessing to some of these families just to be able to do that as well. And we need to kind of really start thinking out of the box on what we can do with it. We are now in a new time, and I think there's a lot of things that we're doing that we'll be able to see continue as we move forward. But our families need to know that, there is hope through everything they're doing. And, one thing that, as I'm going through everything, I just want to read that, I think kind of summing everything up and trying to help families in knowing that there is hope with everything is, I just want to read real quick from Philippians chapter 4, verses 5 through 7. It says, "Rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I say rejoice. Let your gentleness be known to all men. The Lord is at hand. Be anxious for nothing, but in everything, by prayer and supplication, with thanksgiving, let your requests be known to God. And the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and minds through Christ Jesus." And I think those verses right now, we just really need to grab onto and hold onto and let that be an anchor and kind of the model for our life here over the next few weeks. And that's what I'd encourage our families to do right now in the midst of this stress, in the midst of this anxiety, not knowing where to go. Many have lost jobs. We've got many families who a spouse may be out of work and they may have no income, because several are single parent families, several are single income families. So just trying to figure out how they're going to make it is hard. But and I know it's easier said than done when the scripture here says be anxious for nothing. But what that's saying is we just need to give that to God and trust him through it. And what I love about this passage is those aren't just verses, they're promises. And God truly can give you a peace that passes understanding. And he will guard your heart. He'll guard your mind from letting your mind run rampant to all the places and all the negativity of what could happen or what might happen. I think it's important that we're prepared for things, but we need to focus on where we're at today with things. So for a family, what are some ways that we can fight? I know myself, I had, before I came out and into the office today, I've not been out of the house for 3 weeks, except for taking a walk around the block with the dogs at all. And so, it actually felt weird for me to drive into the office to host this today. But what are some things that we can talk to families? Because I know, kind of starting to get stir crazy in the house and feel things are going there. What are things that we can give families to help them not go stir crazy in the house and help them be able to relax? And I think obviously one of the big things is keep a routine, but what are some other things they can do?
Hey Doc, one of the things that came to mind, and somebody has mentioned it over in the chat, was that our ministry's been using Zoom now for 6 years. And where we started using this was doing pilots of how churches could use online technology like this to do small groups for families of kids with disabilities.
Yeah.
Because, one of the challenges is that a lot of times, because, you just can't find any kid down the street to be a babysitter, that the kinds of families we're talking about are folks who oftentimes aren't integrated typically into that small group structure of the church. And so with people thinking about how to make online community more tangible and more real, I think that this is a fabulous time to think about how families can take advantage of something like this to be able to do Bible study together, to encourage and support one another together. And we have an opportunity now to promote connectedness through technology that, it was there all along, but now as people are seeing it, put into practice in terms of their kids using Zoom for little classes in school, or to work together with other kids on a project or to talk to their teachers. I think people are seeing ways that it's possible, and that one of the things we might be intentional about are connecting friends together, connecting families together with similar interests and similar challenges, and allow them to develop some natural systems of support through that. Right.
Yeah, and the thing we need to remember, Zoom's awesome. It's free for the families. They don't have to pay anything for it. They can meet with a group of other people for up to 40 minutes, which is plenty of time. So they don't have to spend money to get a professional account or anything else. So they, we need to remind our families with that as well. Sheri, you have some thoughts?
Yeah. Well, and adding to that, it's even that piece of, our youth pastor is tapping into meeting up with all of the youth group kids, and just that connection just means so much. And being able to, yesterday we were on Zoom, my special needs guy, Nicholas, and we were on Zoom with his teachers just so he could hear their voices, and just so that, we could show them what we were doing, and we took them on a little tour of, Nick's space. And like you said, right now routines, especially for our special needs kids, makes a big difference. And I'm not talking routine in terms of intense minute by minute structure,
right.
But we have our morning routine. We're still getting up at a certain time, and we're still having our breakfast the same way, and then we have what we do for school, and then we have our breaks. And we've taken a section of our family room, and we've just kind of made it Nick's corner. So we built some forts and some blankets and some things where he can just kind of get away from us a little bit if he needs some of that, solitude, just to pull himself together and feel okay. We've made a lot of homemade sensory kind of things. So we're a musical family, and so we've made all sorts of little instruments and stuff that he's kind of got in there. But there's little things that we can build into our kids' routine as they go through the day that's just predictable, because when we have routine and predictable schedule, it lends itself to helping calm our hearts down. It helps us to feel a little bit safer.
Right.
And so anything that we can do like that helps build into that, I think will really help kids. The other thing is, like I had said earlier, we've kind of focused on what, the one or two things we want to really work on with Nick during this time that he's home, and we have our little check-in time. But we're also thinking about, what's something we need to move, we need to exercise, and we can't all just sit in our house all day. And how can we incorporate a little bit of that, whether it's going for a walk or, like you even said, some of that yard work. We've been working, we're expanding Nick's world a little bit. We're showing, and despite how limited he is, we're working with him on, things that just get us up and moving around the house, getting us outside, picking up sticks in the yard, just because any kind of movement, anything that uses our energy naturally helps to calm anxiety for moms, dads, and for our kids. So it's just, we got to make sure that we're, adding a few little pieces to our routine. But like you said, routine really, really matters right now. The kids need the predictability. We don't want to overdo, but we've got to give them it. They need to know what tomorrow's going to look like, because there's so much that is uncertain.
Absolutely.
If we have a routine that helps. Yeah.
I think it's important that, we encourage our parents to be taking care of themselves, through this whole thing. I think, I was joking the other day, and I think, Steve, it may have even been you, saying, I never realized how, socks could be my new pair of shoes, as, it seems that's all I'm wearing, anymore, being at home, not really needing to wear shoes. But then also realizing, well, I'm pretty much just wearing, pair of gym shorts or pair of sweatpants every day too. And it's, I think we can do a lot by, making sure you get up, that you shower, that you clean up, that, put on some better clothes, and not just, the gym clothes laying around all day. Just that also can help give you a better sense of self with things there too, and anything that we can do there to help. Sheri, I'd like to ask you one other thing, and if you guys have time, I'd encourage you to go to Sheri's Facebook page. She's got some great videos on her page too. But I think and I've done this a lot in my talks when talking to parents on coping. But I think one of the important things, especially when you start feeling anxious and really stressed through this, is one way they can control that is by going through and controlling the breathing and just doing a little meditation exercise, and you've done that in some of the things. Would you mind just talking about that, and maybe even taking our parents through that right now, how they would do that?
Yeah. So regardless of what area of my jobs in my life that I work in, or whether I'm even at home with family, it's really important to be able to calm ourselves down. Our brains, when something happens like this, it kind of goes on hyper alert. And we don't want to get stuck there. And that's where kids who have gone through, ongoing childhood trauma, the orphans that I work with, they're kind of stuck in this place where they're always anxious. Their baseline is kind of at a 4 or 5. And we're trying to work with them now to kind of get that to come back down. For us who are normally have a baseline of 0, 1, or 2, we're all experiencing a trauma with the virus right now. And so we're all on this heightened level. All of our stress hormones are all going. And every time a new news story or a new number of deaths or a new number of cases or the next county that got, it's like it's just constant, that barrage kind of stresses us all out. And so I always talk with my families about we've got to be able to calm both our bodies and our brains. And so when I'm talking about, calming our brains down, it's what are we doing with our thinking? And I think you referenced this, Stephen, a little bit earlier. It's easy to go very catastrophic. Oh my gosh, the world's we're coming to an end, and oh my gosh, people I love, everyone's going to die, or this is going to be so bad. And there's a little bit of truth in some of those things, but we've really catastrophized it. And so one of the things when we're trying to calm our brains down is being really careful about our self-talk. And what we're thinking, because what we say generally is what our brains start to really believe. And if we start using big words about all the time and everyone, and it's out of control, our brains really start to hear that. And yes, the virus feels out of control, but more so than ever, we've got brilliant scientists all over the world working to figure this out. It's only a matter of time. And so we've got to remind ourselves to keep our thinking, like Philippians says, to keep our thinking pure and right. And so calm our brains down. Make sure what we're saying to our kids is about the information that they need and that it's factual, and that we're not buying into the sensationalism of media that makes this really, really big and really, really scary.
Right.
And so, let's calm our brains down first, okay? Get that under control. We also have to calm our bodies down, because our bodies have released all these stress hormones and our adrenaline's going and all these other things are going on. And we want to be able to get back down to that baseline several times a day if we can. And I give the example with the clients that I meet with at the practice where Steve and I are at. A couple of years ago, we had a really bad ice storm here in Cleveland. And I live about 45 minutes away from the practice. And I had to drive home, and it's up and down these little hills. And it was, the roads are horrible. And it was so slippery. And I was coming up to this intersection. It was late at night. And I went to hit my brakes for the stop sign. And I just knew I was going to slide right through the intersection. And the traffic coming the other way didn't have a stop sign. And I could see this dump truck just kind of coming through. And I was gripping the steering wheel for dear life. And I slid right through, waiting for that impact at any second. And the truck was full, and he was able to actually slow down just enough and get around the back of me that he missed me. But I slid right through and right off the edge of the road. And I'm sitting on the side of the road, and I was so tense, and I could barely breathe. And it just kind of dawned on me, okay, wait, this is what you do every day. You help people calm down. If you don't calm down, you still have 35 minutes to get yourself home, Sheri. Chill out. And I'm like, and so I started using the things that I work with my kids with at the practice. And I just kind of let go of the steering wheel and let my fingers kind of relax, sat back in my chair a little bit and just kind of, relaxed my body down just a little bit. And then I slowed down and started breathing. And it was the weirdest thing, because I practice with kids at the office, and I tell them there's a difference between big breaths and deep breaths. And when we use deep breathing, it's all the way deep down in our belly. Our shoulders and our chest don't move. It's really deep breathing. And that deep breathing gives a lot of oxygen to our brain. It helps so much to just calm and flood us with good endorphins. when we breathe with the top of our lungs, it's good, but it's not as good as if it's just belly breathing. So I'm sitting there on the side of the road and I'm like, okay, I got to relax. I got to loosen up all my muscles, calm myself down. And I did just a couple deep breaths and I could just kind of feel like, whoosh, everything just kind of calmed down. And I'm like, okay, Sheri, calming my brain, calming my body. You can do this. You can get home. You can, 1 mile at a time. Let's just keep breathing and let's get home. And I got there. So I tell all my clients, now I've actually used it in a crisis and I know it works. And so, but it's really important. If we want to calm ourselves down and calm our kids down, movement is great. But also when we're sitting with them at nighttime and we're tucking them into bed, just calming ourselves down the way we talk to them, the tone of our voice. And if we slow things down, the children that are sitting next to us generally slow down with us. And so we want to use ourselves to help our kids calm down. So when we sit down for dinner, it can be a flurry of craziness, or we can sit down and before we pray for our food, we just, okay, everybody, let's just, let's calm ourselves for a second as we get ready to talk to Jesus. It's just those opportunities throughout the day to just breathe, relax, and practice breathing with only your belly. You can be laying flat on the floor or the couch in your bed. You can be sitting in a chair. You just want to breathe nice and slow, and you don't want to breathe where it's a big breath where everything moves. You just want it to be just deep and slow in your belly, in and out, and just a few times a day. That can have a huge impact on just bringing in some calm and peace. When I start when I'm reading my Bible in the morning, when I'm getting ready to pray, I always kind of just do that first to get myself calm and to get myself in a place where I can listen to what the Lord has to say. So there's places all throughout the day where if we can reset like that, it helps to protect us from long-term impact. It helps that, so that this doesn't become a PTSD kind of situation.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so good, and kind of piggybacking on that, what I always share when you're blowing, as you're taking those deep breaths, I'd say, close your eyes and just picture your favorite place. Picture something that's very relaxing for you. It may be, sitting on the beach, and you can actually hear the waves crashing on the shore. Just help that peace come about you, and then as you blow out, I encourage you to just feel that stress blow out as you're doing it, and even kind of shaking your hands, and you blow, feeling that stress go from the top of your head all the way down your body. And it's amazing. It really does work. You can blow that stress out as you take those deep breaths. But that's a great way that you can help when anxiety, when stress is so high that you feel you can barely move. Those are some of the first steps you can take to help.
Well, and in the craziness of our families and everything we've got, you can still just take 30 seconds to walk away from everything and go stand on your front porch or your back porch, or go hide in a closet or the bathroom and just calm yourself down. Make sure you build that into your daily routine, just to calm yourself. That's self-care to a special needs parent, it feels like a joke sometimes. Like, sure, okay, I'll take care of myself while I'm trying to feed my child, medicate my child, there's so many things going on. But this literally only takes 30 seconds, multiple times a day. Just walk around the house for one moment. Anything you can do to, just calm. You can do it when you climb in. My little guy tends to wander at night, so sometimes I have to climb into bed with him, and he'll be making lots of noise. But I can still, even in that moment, I can choose to calm myself while I'm sitting there with him while he's just, doing his thing.
Yeah, we got one of our comments in the chat says, Sheri, I do these deep breathing exercises with my kiddos all the time, but I laugh when I start to stress out and they remind me, mama breath, and they walk me back through it. So yeah, it's nice when they know it works and remind me of the same thing. So it's cool when we can do that with our kids and help them, and then they know when our kids definitely know when we're stressing out. They can sense it, and if they're able to help walk us through that, that's good too. Again, I want to remind our attendees that if they've got any questions, they can put it in either the Q&A or in the chat. We've got one question, and Steve, I'll throw this to you. It's from a parent that I got earlier. She lives in Michigan, and she said, I'm extremely worried that my child who has Down syndrome will be discriminated against and refuse a ventilator or life-saving treatment if they get sick with COVID-19. Do you think this may be a real issue? I'm so scared for my daughter. I know I plan to take her to Ohio if she needs care.
Well, one of the things that I'm aware of over the last week is that within the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, there's like a National Council on Disability, and that they have been very clear in, working within HHS, which is then in turn working with the states, that when there are decisions that need to be made in terms of prioritizing access to medical resources, that they are extremely vigilant that people with disabilities not be discriminated against. There were a news report about a week and a half ago where I think it was Alabama was one state and Washington was another, where there was, in the policy that they had talked about who would get access to ventilators, that people with more severe intellectual and developmental disabilities were left off the list. The National Office on Disability has been extremely vigilant about this in the last week or so, and pointing out to different states and localities that that's not consistent with federal law and not consistent with Americans with Disabilities Act. And here at 2:00, we have this little tradition now that's called Wine with DeWine, in that that our governor here, who is extremely proactive in addressing this, and Dr. Amy Acton, who is an alumnus of my medical school and is the director of the Department of Health, come on and do an update and a daily briefing every day. And so, in anticipation of the surge, that Dr. Acton yesterday started talking about some of these issues. And she very explicitly said that when they were thinking about, what do we do if we get into a situation where we don't have enough resources to be able to care for everyone, she said explicitly that disability was not going to be used to discriminate. And actually, yesterday, because it was Autism Awareness Day, our governor was up there talking with his bright blue tie on in recognition of that fact. So that, we live in a state where our government officials have been very, very clear in saying that people with disabilities will get access to the same care as everyone else, during this difficult time.
Yeah, that's awesome. We've got another question that's come in, and I can go ahead and take this, and Steve, you can join in as well. The question is, are there churches who are doing online activities with kids as well? And the answer is absolutely. There are many churches throughout the country right now who are doing online activities for kids. I know the church that I attend here in Kansas City, they've got all their curriculum is being done for their children's ministry. They've got a special curriculum for their special needs ministry, doing a special class for the adult special needs class. But there are many churches throughout the country right now who are doing things for the kids. I've talked with a couple churches who they are actually trying to do little Zoom groups for their Sunday school classes, and where maybe one time through the week they might be able to meet for a little bit of time where they can see one another's face and then do a small short lesson there with that. But there's a lot of different things you can do, and I want you to kind of think through that. We're actually going to do another webinar in coming weeks on kind of more what can churches be doing right now with this. But there are many there, and so it's important that we're reaching out to our parents and helping them, but we can't forget the kids with that. And there's still great programming that we can do for them through that. One resource I want to make sure everybody is aware of is Key Ministry has a great resource on their website. Go to keyministry.org/coronavirus, and they are constantly updating many different blogs, videos, different things there that will help you, whether you're a family, whether you're church, just a lot of different great resources that are there. But Steve, any other things you'd like to jump in there on that?
Yeah, let me follow up with a couple of things so that, like you, I've been incredibly impressed by how proactive a lot of churches are being during this time in terms of putting content online, including folks who are involved in disability ministry. So that one resource that we make available is that, if you happen to be serving as a volunteer or a leader in special needs or disability ministry in your church, we help to facilitate a group on Facebook. It's called the Special Needs and Disability Ministry Leaders Facebook group, where we're closing in on 2,000 members of that group right now. And that there's a tremendous amount of collaboration and idea sharing, and people are getting connected through that group. So that if you're a leader and if you're curious about some things that other churches and other ministries are doing, that's a great place to go to be able to see some examples. If you're a parent who's watching today and interested in this, you can certainly feel free to share that resource with the people on your children's ministry team, the people on your disability ministries team. Welcome them, to come and become part of the group. I also know that one of the things that, Beth and Catherine from our ministry team are doing every Monday is a meetup for people involved in disability ministry at noon Eastern. It's just an idea share where, again, everybody's talking about what everybody else is doing and looking at ways to be able to better serve people better during that time. So the Special Needs and Disability Ministry Leaders group on Facebook would be one resource. The idea share that we do on Zoom Mondays at 12 Eastern would be another resource for people looking to explore new ways of doing ministry at this time.
Yeah, those have both been great resources, and any disability ministry leader needs to be part of those. They've been very, very good there with that. Well, we are coming up on the end of our time, but Steve and Sheri, I'd like to ask you as we're closing out, what is kind of a final word that you can say to our families on how they can survive, during this stay-at-home orders, shelter-in-place orders? One last bit of encouragement that we haven't already touched on. Sheri, I'll go with you first. Ladies first.
Thank you. I think that, the most important thing is to keep it in perspective. This is temporary. God is still on the throne, and we'll get through this. There's some hiccups and some bumps, but we're special needs families. We know hiccups and bumps. We can do this. And if we are there and watching out for each other and getting connected, that's just important. Make sure you've got your people that you're connected to, and if you're not connected to people, hook up with Key Ministry and get connected to some people. There, like you said, so many resources out there to do that right now. That's one of the great things I tell my kids. Look for where you see God working, because in the midst of conflict and strife and pain and hurt, God is working, and he's doing things, and he's redeeming things. And if we keep that perspective that God is over this, and that he's going to work, and he's going to change us, he's going to mold us, he's going to do things. Our children are not being left out of that. God is doing things in our families, and our job is to just be open, be sensitive. Okay, Lord, what do you want from me today? What can we do here today? And to keep that perspective and not let our thinking run amok, and not let the brokenness of this world control our minds. It's the perspective. This is still, we're God's children.
Absolutely.
Okay, and so I have two thoughts on that, but they kind of go hand in hand and dovetail with one another. what we know out of like the research on disaster preparedness and helping to protect kids against PTSD is that when kids were engaged in preparing for a disaster, some other big event, together with their family, they were less likely to have complications down the road. And so one of the things for families to think about at this point, and this dovetails with sort of the second piece of this, is that God gave everyone gifts and talents and experiences and abilities to use on behalf of the kingdom, including families that have been impacted by disability. So that one of the things that you may want to consider would be, are there ways that, even if your family's struggling with this, are there ways that you can serve other families? I mean, your kids can be like drawing pictures for people in the nursing home. You can still be calling other people, FaceTiming other people or using Zoom with other folks. And that God has probably uniquely positioned you, to be his witness and to show his love, in front of people that the church would never otherwise have access to. So I would just ask people to be aware of, just be looking for like God opportunities where we can share his love and faithfully witness to other folks. And think about how the impact will be down the road of our kids having the opportunity to come alongside us as we serve other people during this time and to try and reflect the gospel in that way.
Right. And the other thing I'd thank you both. The other thing I'd piggyback on that is, we're talking about all these resources and Michelle, one of our, attendees also commented on this. Our families truly are being inundated with a lot of different resources, from schools, from therapists, from the church. So we also have to be mindful of that as we are dealing with the families. And the thing that I cannot stress enough is we really need to go back to some of our old-time technology, and that is a simple phone call. And how we definitely need to remember the importance of just picking up a phone and calling our families and letting them know that we still love them, that we're here for them. And the thing I want to stress with everyone is remember that while we're in the midst of everything being canceled, this being canceled here, that being canceled there, this being postponed, no one wants to be canceling things. It's hard for all of us. I know Steve and Key Ministries canceled things. We with SOAR, we've canceled things, and it's painful. It's hard for us to do. But the one thing that has never been canceled with this is our love for our families and Christ's love for our individuals. And nothing's going to ever cancel that. And so we need to remind our families that and let them know that we're here for them. But with that, we're coming up on our time. Steve and Sheri, I want to thank you so much for being with us. For families watching, you may not be too familiar with SOAR. I just want to let you know that SOAR is here for you. SOAR exists now to help answer the three main questions that every family with disabilities has. First question is, will my child ever be able to provide for themselves? Second question is, who's going to take care of me who's going to take care of my child once I'm gone? And then the third question is, who's going to take care of me as a parent? And so SOAR is going to help answer all three of those questions with our current and future programming. And we invite you to come along the journey. If you would like to help offset the cost of us doing these webinars, you can go to soarspecialneeds.com/donate to help with this. We are going to have another webinar next week. I'm honored to have Dr. Joe and Cindy Farini joining me. They are the author of Love Always. And we are going to be talking on how to help your marriage survive in quarantine. We just got done talking about, the stress and all that. But it's important that we spend some time talking about our marriage. I've not really heard many people talk yet dealing with the marriage. And again, the family with disabilities, that marriage is already under tremendous amount of strain, and now we've added much more strain to it. So Joe and Cindy are going to be joining me next Friday, the 10th, again at noon Central time. We'll be sending out links this afternoon for that. You can sign up again. Hopefully we'll get everything set up for Facebook Live that will work for us next week with that. But we appreciate everyone coming out. We will get this up on our Facebook page, on our YouTube page, and our Vimeo account, so you can share that with all your families and everyone else. But Steve and Sheri, thank you so much for joining us, and hope everyone has a very safe day, and remember that this is just for a season, and God is in control. So thank you so much, guys.
Bye-bye.
Have a
Thank
blessed
you.
day.